A silent army of ancient stones stands frozen in time along the coast of France. This is the Carnac Stones, Europe's own Stonehenge, a megalithic complex of thousands of menhirs arranged in precise rows. These are not random placements, but structures believed to align with cosmic patterns, whispering secrets of a prehistoric civilization's profound understanding of the heavens. Why would a Neolithic society invest such immense effort to arrange these colossal rocks? And what celestial messages were they encoding into the very landscape? By the end of this journey, you will understand how these stones form a sophisticated astronomical observatory that challenges everything we thought we knew about ancient human capabilities. We will explore why these stones were placed with such precision and what their enduring mysteries reveal about our own connection to the cosmos. What does it mean to find our place in a universe written in stone? Stretching across the landscape, the sheer ambition of Karnak becomes overwhelming. Think of it not as a single monument, but as an entire territory reorganized by human hands. More than 3,000 individual stones stand in silent regiments, their lines running for over 4 kilometers. This is not a random collection. It is a complex with distinct districts, the major alignments of Mainek, Kermario, and Kerleskan, each forming their own dense, parallel avenues. Scattered among them are the dolmens, which are stone table tombs, and tumuli, great earthen mounds covering burial chambers. Unlike the famous ring of Stonehenge, this is a sprawling, linear design that dominates the very shape of the land. The coordination required is staggering, pointing to a society with a singular, long-term vision. This was not a project for one chieftain's lifetime, but a generational endeavor demanding sophisticated planning, a shared labor force, and a deep, unwavering motivation. What universal truth was so important that it required carving the very ground to reflect it? To understand that, we must lift our gaze from the earth to the heavens, where the true architects of Karnak may have found their blueprint. The world these builders inhabited was one of profound change and emerging stability. Along the fertile Atlantic coast, a society flourished, a people whose name and language have been utterly erased by time. All we have left is their stone legacy, a testament carved into the earth itself. The Carnac stones were raised during the Neolithic period, primarily between 4,500 and 3,300 BC. This was an era of revolution as nomadic hunter-gatherers began to settle, embracing agriculture and forming the first complex communities. These builders were not an isolated tribe, but part of a vast, interconnected megalithic culture that stretched along the Atlantic fringe of Europe, from modern-day Portugal to the British Isles. They shared ideas, technologies, and a common spiritual vision across the sea, a prehistoric network exchanging the blueprints for immortality in stone. As expert archaeologist Jean-Pierre Mohan observed, the megaliths of Karnak represent a peak of Neolithic engineering and social organization, reflecting a society deeply connected to its environment and the cosmos. Without a single written word, their intentions are a silent puzzle. We are forced to become detectives, interpreting their grand design through the slow, meticulous language of archaeology and the precise patterns of astronomy. How did they develop the sophisticated knowledge required to align thousands of stones with such celestial precision? Was it a painstaking accumulation of observations passed down through generations? And what finally happened to them? Did a catastrophic event, a climate shift, or a gradual social transformation lead them to abandon their sacred, meticulously arranged landscape? reflecting on their lost world does more than just chronicle the past. It challenges the very timeline of human intellect, suggesting that the drive to understand the universe is an ancient, fundamental part of who we are. That silent stone army was built to witness a celestial dance. Envision the sun rising over the Carnac alignments on the summer solstice, its first golden rays perfectly parallel to the long rows of menhirs. It is as if the entire complex was designed to capture this single, fleeting moment of cosmic alignment. The primary astronomical theory suggests these stones are not just monuments, but sophisticated sightlines. The major alignments appear oriented towards the rising and setting points of the sun and moon at key times of the year, particularly the solstices and equinoxes. For instance, the grand axis of the Carnac alignments points directly toward the sunrise at the summer solstice. Other rows may correlate with more complex lunar events, like the lunar standstills, which mark the extreme points of the moon's 18.6-year cycle. This precise orientation is not a coincidence. It implies the builders possessed detailed observational astronomy, patiently tracking celestial bodies over generations to map their movements onto the very ground they walked. Such a system would have functioned as a colossal, permanent calendar, marking seasonal changes essential for planting, harvest, and the rituals that bound their society together. Are we witnessing an ancient observatory, a stone computer designed to predict celestial events and harmonize human life with the fundamental rhythms of the cosmos? This intricate correlation between stone and star reveals a sophisticated understanding of the universe that in its own way rivals modern science. It suggests these ancient people saw the sky not as a distant void, but as a living map, and they built a terrestrial mirror to read it. But why go to such incredible lengths? What deeper purpose did this cosmic alignment serve beyond a simple calendar? The answer may lie not in the stones themselves, but in the powerful beliefs that compelled their placement. The granite itself tells a story of immense determination. Each of the thousands of menhirs represents a monumental physical challenge, a puzzle of engineering solved long before the invention of the wheel or metal tools. These are not small rocks. Many individual stones weigh more than 20 tons, the equivalent of 2 full-sized elephants. The builders sourced this incredibly hard granite from local outcrops, but local did not mean easy. Quarrying these colossal blocks using only stone mauls, fire, and water required immense skill and patience. Then came the truly Herculean task, moving them. Imagine teams of people, perhaps using wooden sledges greased with animal fat, inching each massive stone across kilometers of uneven terrain. They would have employed rollers made from tree trunks and leveraged every ounce of human and animal power in a coordinated, communal effort that must have defined their entire society. This was not a sporadic act of devotion, but a sustained, generational project of logistics and raw physical will. Why choose such a stubborn, difficult material? Granite is virtually eternal, resistant to weathering for millennia. Its choice speaks to a desire for permanence, a message carved not for a century but for all time. The consistent alignment and spacing of the rows, achieved without modern measuring tools, points to a sophisticated system of sightlines and markers, a ground-level blueprint executed with stunning precision. The journey of a single stone from its bedrock home to its final standing position was a triumph. The creation of the entire complex stands as one of humanity's greatest collective achievements, a testament to what people can accomplish when united by a shared cosmic vision. But this practical mastery only deepens the central mystery. What was the powerful belief, the driving force, that made such a staggering effort not just possible but essential? These stones were far more than a celestial clock. To truly understand Karnak, we must walk in the footsteps of its people, for whom these granite rows were the living heart of their world. Picture the sight during a major seasonal festival. The long, parallel avenues would have functioned as sacred pathways, channeling processions of people through a ritual landscape. This was not a random walk, it was a symbolic journey, perhaps representing a transition between the world of the living and the realm of the ancestors, whose burial dolmens were integrated into the complex. The very act of moving through these stone corridors with the towering menhirs guiding your way would have been a powerful, immersive experience, connecting the community to the cycles of nature and the cosmos above. As anthropologist Miranda Aldhouse Green suggests, megalithic sites like Karnak were probably centers for communal gatherings, reinforcing social bonds and transmitting cultural knowledge through generations. Beyond the spiritual, there was a deeply practical social function. Coordinating the labor for such a massive project would have required a powerful, centralized authority and a shared identity. The successful raising of a single menhir was a triumph of collective effort, strengthening the community with each stone set in place. Furthermore, the sheer, undeniable scale of the alignments served as a permanent territorial marker. This was a clear statement of power and unity, a warning to potential rivals that this land and its resources were claimed and defended by a highly organized society. How did these functions intertwine? The astronomical alignments dictated the timing of rituals, the rituals reinforced social cohesion, and that collective strength was made manifest in the territorial display of the stones themselves. They formed a cohesive symbolic system where science, spirituality, and society were inseparable. This transforms Karnak from a simple observatory into a holistic center of ancient life, a place where the community defined its very existence in relation to the earth, the sky, and each other. Etched into the very skin of the granite are faint whispers from a lost language. Scattered across the Karnak complex, on the surfaces of certain menhirs and the capstones of dolmens, are intricate carvings known as petroglyphs. These are not the grand, dramatic rows of stones, but a more intimate, hidden layer of mystery. You find concentric circles spiraling inward, small cup-like depressions drilled into the rock, and networks of interlocking lines. These symbols, weathered by millennia of wind and rain, form a silent, visual code that archaeologists are still struggling to crack. What do these spirals and cups and rings truly mean? One compelling theory suggests they are a primitive star chart, mapping the positions of the sun, moon, and perhaps even constellations. A spiral could represent the cyclical nature of the seasons or the sun's journey, while a cluster of cup marks might mirror a specific star cluster visible in the night sky. Others interpret them as territorial markers, denoting clan boundaries or sacred pathways through the ritual landscape. They could even be a form of counting system, tracking lunar cycles or generations of leaders. The most fascinating idea involves their practical use. On a specific day of the year, like a solstice, a beam of sunlight might strike a particular cup mark, casting a shadow that aligns perfectly with a carved ring, turning the stone into a precise, interactive solar calendar. This suggests the entire site was not just aligned to the cosmos, but actively conversing with it, using light and shadow to mark the passage of sacred time. Why were these intricate symbols placed only on certain stones? Perhaps they served as instructional markers for priests or astronomers, indicating where to stand and what to observe. Or maybe they were meant as a permanent record of ancestral knowledge, a message carved in stone for future generations they knew would come. Decoding this visual language is like trying to read a book where we have lost the alphabet. Each successful interpretation brings us one step closer to hearing the voices of the people who not only moved mountains, but took the time to inscribe their understanding of the universe upon them. Karnak was not an isolated wonder, but a vital node in a vast prehistoric network. From the iconic stone circles of Stonehenge on the Salisbury Plain to the enigmatic Nurag towers of Sardinia and the massive stone temples of Malta, a shared megalithic impulse swept across ancient Europe. These distant cultures, seemingly separated by sea and mountain, were likely connected by the exchange of ideas, floating along the Atlantic coast and through maritime trade routes. They shared a common drive to build immense stone structures, a language of architecture spoken by people who left no written words. This connection reveals itself most clearly in their celestial obsessions. Just as the central axis at Stonehenge frames the summer solstice sunrise, and the stones of Carnac in Scotland capture the complex cycles of the moon, the long rows of Karnak are precisely tuned to the same cosmic rhythms. This was not a coincidence. It points to a pan-European tradition of sophisticated astronomy, where knowledge of the skies was a prized commodity, traded and refined across generations. How did this knowledge travel so widely? Was it through migrating artisans, seasonal gatherings, or a shared spiritual vision that transcended local tribes? The evidence carved in stone suggests a level of cultural interaction in Neolithic Europe that we are only beginning to appreciate. Yet, for all these shared principles, Karnak asserts its own powerful identity. While Stonehenge forms a tight, concentric circle and the Maltese temples are complex cloverleaf structures, Karnak's genius is in its breathtaking linearity. Its thousands of stones march across the landscape in relentless parallel lines, creating an experience of processional movement that is distinct from the more static, enclosed feeling of a stone circle. This unique layout suggests a local adaptation, a specific response to the Breton landscape and the particular spiritual needs of its people. Comparative studies show us that while the core belief in a connected cosmos was universal, its architectural expression was beautifully diverse. The environment played a crucial role, the available granite in Brittany lending itself to these towering menhirs, while the chalky plains of England inspired a different form. So, was Karnak a central hub in this network or a brilliant regional interpretation? The sheer scale and complexity of the alignments suggest it was likely a place of immense importance, perhaps a pilgrimage site or a center of learning that drew people from across the megalithic world. Placing Karnak within this wider context does not diminish its mystery but enriches it. We begin to see not just a solitary monument, but one voice in a grand continental chorus, all singing the same song of stone and stars. This interconnected web of ancient genius forces us to reconsider the capabilities of prehistoric societies, hinting at a level of communication and shared purpose that reshapes our understanding of early Europe. To crack the code of the Carnac Stones, we must merge the lens of the astronomer with the trowel of the archaeologist. This is the core mission of archaeoastronomy, a field dedicated to understanding how ancient cultures perceived and recorded the skies. It moves beyond simple speculation, applying rigorous scientific methods to these ancient stone puzzles. Specialists begin by taking incredibly precise measurements of every stone's position and orientation. They then feed this data into powerful computers, which can recreate the exact appearance of the night sky as it was 5,000, 6,000, even 7,000 years ago. By overlaying the digital landscape of stones onto this simulated ancient sky, patterns begin to emerge that are impossible to see with the naked eye alone. The goal is to distinguish deliberate alignment from random chance through robust statistical analysis. At Karnak, this process has revealed compelling evidence. The long rows do not just vaguely face the sunrise, they are oriented with a precision that consistently targets the solstice sunrises and the most extreme rising and setting points of the moon. Think of it as a colossal stone sighting device, its long avenues acting like the crosshairs on a telescope aimed at specific celestial events. One pioneering researcher, Alexander Thom, dedicated his career to mapping megalithic sites. After extensive surveys, he argued that the Carnac alignments were not just a simple calendar but a complex lunar observatory. He proposed that the builders used the stones to track the moon's subtle wobble over its 18.6-year cycle, a feat that would have allowed them to predict eclipses. An eclipse would have been a moment of profound power for these people, a time when the predictable order of the cosmos seemed to falter. The ability to foresee such an event would have granted the ruling priest astronomers immense authority, solidifying their role as the crucial intermediaries between the community and the cosmos. Yet, this scientific approach is not without its controversies. Some scholars urge caution, pointing out that with thousands of stones, it is statistically possible to find some alignments that appear significant purely by accident. They question whether we are projecting our own modern scientific mindset onto a people whose motivations may have been entirely symbolic or spiritual. Could an alignment that seems precise to us have been simply good enough for them? This healthy skepticism drives the field forward, demanding ever more robust evidence. Today, new technologies are closing the gap between past intention and modern interpretation. High-resolution laser scanning, or LiDAR, can map the entire Karnak landscape down to the centimeter, revealing subtle gradients and relationships invisible from the ground. Three-dimensional modeling allows us to virtually walk the avenues at any point in history, watching how the sun and moon interacted with the stones across the centuries. These tools are like giving sight to the blind, allowing us to see the site through the eyes of its builders for the very first time. What new secrets will we uncover as we continue to blend the cutting edge of 21st century science with the enduring mystery of these Neolithic stones? This fusion of disciplines offers our best chance to finally hear the cosmic story the Carnac builders carved so patiently into the earth. The stones have gathered stories like moss over the centuries. Local Breton legends whisper that the orderly ranks of Karnak are not the work of ancient astronomers, but an entire Roman legion, frozen in stone by the wizard Merlin as they pursued him across the countryside. Another tale speaks of a saint who, confronted by a pagan army, turned the soldiers to stone where they stood, their ranks forever petrified as punishment for their sins. These myths, though historically impossible, are far more than simple fables. They represent a profound human impulse, the need to explain the inexplicable. Faced with a landscape of such impossible scale and mystery, later generations crafted narratives that made sense within their own worldview, attributing the stones to powerful saints or magical beings. This act of storytelling was a form of protection. By giving the stones a supernatural origin, the folklore effectively sanctified them, discouraging local farmers from dismantling the alignments for building materials and ensuring their preservation through the ages. Some of the most enchanting stories claim the stones are not truly inert. It is said that on certain nights, under the full moon or at the turn of the year, the granite soldiers come alive. They process down to the sea to drink or dance in the moonlight before returning to their silent posts at dawn. This belief directly links the stones to celestial forces in the popular imagination, echoing the scientific theories of astronomical alignment with a layer of magical realism. Why do these legends persist with such vitality? They fulfill a deep, enduring need to find meaning and narrative in the ancient mysteries that surround us. They transform a cold archaeological site into a living, breathing part of the cultural landscape, integrated into the oral histories and local identity of the Breton people. Exploring this rich tapestry of folklore does not diminish the scientific pursuit, but rather complements it. It reminds us that the true significance of Karnak exists in the intersection of hard data and human wonder, a place where measurement and myth together attempt to decode the same eternal silence. That eternal silence is now under siege. The very forces of nature and time that the Carnac builders sought to defy with their granite monuments are today joined by modern pressures, creating a constant battle for preservation. Each of the 3,000 stones is a patient in a slow-motion emergency, threatened by natural decay and the sheer weight of human curiosity. Rain and wind, season after season, wear away at the granite surfaces, slowly eroding the ancient petroglyphs and undermining the foundations of the massive menhirs. This natural erosion can cause stones to tilt precariously or even collapse entirely, a domino effect that could distort the precise alignments carved into the landscape millennia ago. Alongside the elements, relentless vegetation growth pushes roots into cracks, prying stones apart from within. Yet perhaps the most significant modern threat comes from the feet of the more than 1 million visitors who walk these sacred pathways every year. The cumulative impact of this foot traffic compacts the soil, damages root systems that stabilize the ground, and risks accidentally chipping or graffitiing the stones. The site's immense popularity, while a testament to its global importance, is also its greatest vulnerability. How do you protect something that was meant to be experienced without locking it away from the world? The answer lies in a delicate and ongoing dance of conservation. Teams of specialists work meticulously to stabilize leaning stones, sometimes using discrete supports buried beneath the soil to keep them upright without compromising the site's visual authenticity. Vegetation is carefully managed, a constant war against invasive plants while preserving the natural Breton heathland that frames the stones. To manage the impact of tourism, boardwalks and designated paths now guide visitors, protecting the most fragile areas from direct contact. This is not about creating a sterile museum, but about ensuring the stones can continue to stand for another 5,000 years. The challenge is intensifying with a new, global threat: climate change. Rising sea levels and increasingly violent storms along the Brittany coast pose a direct risk to the coastal portions of the alignments. Increased salinity in the air and soil can accelerate the weathering of the granite, while severe flooding could destabilize the very ground the stones stand on. This adds a layer of urgency to the preservation efforts, demanding forward-thinking strategies that account for a changing environment. The central, heartbreaking question remains: how do we balance the public's right to witness this wonder with the absolute duty to protect it? Closing the site entirely would be a failure, a loss of living history. Yet, allowing unfettered access guarantees its slow degradation. The preservation of Karnak is a shared global responsibility, a test of our commitment to safeguarding not just a collection of rocks, but a profound chapter in the human story, a cosmic message we are still learning to read. The very name of this place holds a key to its long memory. Karnak comes from the ancient Breton language, a phrase meaning mound of stones or place of cairns. This is not a modern label, but a word rooted deep in the local soil, a direct linguistic link to the megalithic past from the perspective of a later people. Brittany itself is a peninsula of powerful identity, a region of France with its own Celtic heritage and a language, Breton, that echoes across the centuries. This rich cultural backdrop, filled with tales of druids and powerful nature spirits, has often been woven around the stones. For a long time, popular imagination painted the druids as the architects of Karnak, conducting rituals within the stone avenues. Yet this connection, while evocative, is a chronological mirage. The stones were already millennia old when the first Celtic peoples arrived in the region. The true value of this later Celtic culture lies not in claiming authorship, but in demonstrating how the monument was continuously revered. The Bronze Age and Iron Age inhabitants, the ancestors of the Celts, would have encountered the alignments as ancient, awe-inspiring relics. How did they interact with this pre-existing sacred geography? It is highly likely they saw the stones not as abandoned ruins, but as a place of inherent power, integrating them into their own belief systems and territorial markers. They may have conducted their own ceremonies within the stone rows, perhaps burying their own chieftains in the existing dolmens, adding a new layer of meaning to the Neolithic landscape. This process of reinterpretation is crucial for archaeologists. By understanding the distinct cultural layers, from Neolithic builders to Celtic settlers, they can carefully separate the original purpose of the site from the meanings later generations projected onto it. A carved symbol from the Iron Age on a Neolithic menhir is not part of the initial design, but it is a powerful testament to the site's enduring significance. This linguistic and cultural history reveals a profound truth. The Carnac Stones were not a static monument frozen in a single moment of time. They were a living, breathing part of the landscape for countless generations, their meaning fluid and evolving. They accumulated stories and purposes like layers of sediment, each culture finding its own reason to preserve the silent army of granite. This long-term significance challenges our modern tendency to compartmentalize history. It shows us that the most powerful human creations are those that can speak across the ages, inviting every new generation to find its own story written between the lines of stone. The stones are arranged with a precision that defies random chance. Look closely at the long avenues of menhirs, and you begin to see an underlying order, a hidden geometry etched into the landscape. The rows are not merely straight, they are meticulously parallel with a consistent spacing between each towering stone. This is not the work of intuition alone, it suggests the application of a formal system of measurement. One of the most compelling theories comes from the work of Alexander Thom, an engineer who surveyed hundreds of megalithic sites. After taking thousands of precise measurements, he proposed that the builders used a standardized unit he called the megalithic yard. This unit, equivalent to about 2.7 feet, appears again and again in the spacing and dimensions of the stones at Karnak and other sites across Europe. Imagine teams of Neolithic surveyors using ropes knotted at precise intervals or calibrated wooden rods to lay out these immense alignments, ensuring consistency over kilometers of terrain. But the mathematical sophistication goes even further. The geometry of the site reveals an understanding of shapes and angles that would later form the foundation of classical mathematics. The alignments incorporate perfect right angles and form triangles whose proportions match what we now call Pythagorean triples, relationships between the sides of a right-angled triangle. This was thousands of years before the Greek philosopher Pythagoras was even born. Why would a society without written numbers encode such advanced mathematical concepts in stone? The answer may lie in their view of the cosmos. For them, mathematics was not an abstract exercise, it was the sacred language of the universe itself. The predictable movements of the sun and moon, the harmonious cycles of the seasons, all of it could be described through number and form. By building these geometrical patterns into the earth, they were creating a mirror of celestial order, a terrestrial map of a mathematical heaven. The stones themselves become physical representations of numerical relationships, a permanent testament to their belief that the cosmos was built on a framework of divine geometry. This revelation completely shatters the outdated image of prehistoric people as primitive. It points to a sophisticated intellectual tradition, a seamless integration of science, art, and spirituality. The consistent use of the megalithic yard across Europe presents another profound puzzle. How did this standard unit of measurement spread from Brittany to the British Isles and beyond? Was there a guild of itinerant master builders traveling from one great project to another, carrying their knotted ropes and their precise knowledge? Or does this shared standard point to an even deeper, shared cosmological vision that transcended local cultures? The silent stones of Karnak ask us to reconsider the very dawn of scientific thought, suggesting that the human drive to quantify and understand the world is as ancient as our desire to reach for the stars. Beneath the orderly rows of granite lies a hidden world of energy and earth. The ground under Karnak is not a blank slate, but a dynamic landscape of underground springs, mineral veins, and deep geological faults. Some researchers propose that the builders of Karnak were not just mapping the sky, but also tapping into these terrestrial forces. They suggest the stones act as markers along what are often called ley lines, hypothetical alignments that are said to connect ancient sacred sites across great distances, channeling a form of earth energy or spiritual power. While mainstream archaeology remains deeply skeptical of such invisible energies, the physical geology of the area is very real. The same underground water sources that would have been vital for the Neolithic community and the unique magnetic properties of certain local mineral deposits could have been perceived as points of concentrated power. It is not difficult to envision a society deeply attuned to its environment sensing a special vitality in these places, a force that made the location feel inherently sacred. This idea expands into a practice known as geomancy, the art of harmonizing human structures with the perceived energies of the natural world. Could the placement of a specific menhir mark the intersection of a terrestrial water vein and a celestial sightline? Might the long, straight avenues themselves be designed to amplify or direct these subtle forces, just as they channel the light of the rising sun? When you superimpose the stone alignments onto a map of the region's underground features and its astronomical orientations, a fascinating pattern emerges. The major rows do not exist in isolation. They often point directly towards distant burial mounds, solitary standing stones, or other ceremonial sites, weaving the entire landscape into a single, interconnected web of meaning. This suggests the builders saw no separation between the earth below and the heavens above. For them, the cosmos was a unified whole, and their sacred geography reflected that profound connection. The stones become pivotal points in a vast, invisible grid where terrestrial power, ancestral memory, and celestial order converged. Whether you interpret these connections as literal energy lines or as a powerful symbolic system, the result is the same, a holistic vision of the world that challenges our modern, compartmentalized view of science and spirituality. These seasonal gatherings pulsed with the rhythm of the cosmos itself. The stones did not stand over a permanent city, but a landscape that cycled between profound silence and vibrant, temporary life. Excavations around the alignments reveal a telling pattern: the absence of deep, accumulated trash layers from long-term habitation, but instead scattered finds of distinctive pottery, polished stone axes, and the remains of temporary hearths. These artifacts point not to a resident population, but to pilgrims and participants arriving for specific, momentous occasions. Imagine the Breton spring as the sun's path shifted toward the equinox. From across the region, families and clans would have journeyed to Karnak, their arrival timed by the very stones that now rose before them. The avenues would have transformed into a bustling, sacred fairground, filled with the smells of roasting meat, the sounds of music and barter, and the sight of rituals unfolding along the precise paths laid out by their ancestors. This was a place of convergence where the celestial calendar dictated the terms of human interaction. The summer solstice, with the sun's rays perfectly framing the Carnac alignments, would have been a peak moment, a time of maximum light and communal energy, likely marked by feasts and ceremonies affirming the social order. How did these predictable cosmic rhythms shape their entire world? The gatherings at Karnak were the linchpin of Neolithic life. They synchronized not just rituals, but the essential practicalities of survival. The optimal times for planting and harvest decided upon under the watchful eyes of the stones and the ruling priest astronomers. Here, a young farmer from the coast would learn the seasonal signs from an elder from the inland forests, exchanging knowledge alongside goods. Marriages might be arranged, alliances forged, and cultural stories passed down, all within the context of this shared celestial celebration. This cyclical use of the site made it a living, breathing calendar, but more than that, it was the engine of cultural continuity. A child witnessing the solstice alignment for the first time would carry that memory, and decades later, return with their own children, creating an unbroken chain of tradition that spanned centuries. The stones ensured that every generation learned its place not just in the family line, but in the vast turning wheel of the cosmos. The silent stones of Karnak are no longer a relic reserved for archaeologists alone. Their ancient avenues now draw a different kind of pilgrim, modern spiritual seekers who arrive not with trowels and measuring tapes, but with a deep yearning to connect with the same forces that inspired the original builders. For today's druids, neo-pagans, and practitioners of earth-based religions, this is not a dead monument but a living, breathing cathedral. They see Karnak as a powerful vortex of natural energy, a place where the veil between worlds feels thin. During the summer solstice, you might find circles of people meditating within the stone rows at dawn, their silent practice a stark contrast to the bustling tourist paths just meters away. Others conduct gentle rituals, leaving offerings of flowers or crystals at the base of the menhirs, honoring the spirits of the land and the ancestors who raised them. These modern ceremonies are a conscious revival, an attempt to tap into a spiritual lineage that they believe stretches back to the Neolithic mind. Why here? Why do these granite blocks, more than any other site, exert such a magnetic pull on the contemporary soul? The answer lies in a powerful fusion of ancient folklore and modern esoteric thought. The old Breton legends of stones that come to life at night seamlessly blend with New Age concepts of ley lines and cosmic energy portals. Followers often speak of feeling a tangible vibration or a profound sense of peace when standing in the alignments, interpreting this as proof that the site was designed to channel terrestrial and celestial forces. This is not seen as a new idea, but as the rediscovery of the builder's original intent, a purpose that modern science has simply failed to measure. This spiritual resurgence creates a complex dance with the site's guardians. Heritage managers face a delicate challenge, balancing the need for strict preservation with respecting the sincere spiritual needs of these groups. A crystal left as an offering might be seen as litter by a conservationist, while a ritual fire poses a clear risk to the protected landscape. There are occasional tensions over access, especially during significant astronomical events when both tourists and practitioners converge on the same narrow avenues. Who has the right to define the proper use of this ancient space? Is it solely an archaeological artifact to be studied and preserved under glass? Or does its enduring power lie in its continued ability to inspire awe and spiritual connection? This very conflict highlights a fundamental shift in how we value such places. We are moving from seeing Karnak as a puzzle to be solved to understanding it as a living landscape that can hold multiple truths simultaneously. The stones become a mirror, reflecting back whatever we bring to them, whether it is scientific curiosity or a search for transcendence. This ongoing spiritual life proves that the true mystery of Karnak is not locked in the past, but is a story that is still being written, with each new visitor adding another layer to its enduring legacy. The spade and the trowel have their own quiet stories to tell. While the stones stand in silent majesty above, the real detective work often happens in the soil below. Archaeological excavations around the Carnac alignments have been like reading a book written in layers of earth, each stratum holding fragments of a lost world. The most telling finds are not the grand stones themselves, but the small, everyday objects left behind. Scattered around the bases of the menhirs and within the nearby burial chambers, archaeologists have uncovered countless pottery shards, their surfaces sometimes bearing simple, incised decorations. Alongside them lie finely worked flint tools, arrowheads shaped with remarkable skill, and polished stone axes that were both practical instruments and symbols of status. These are not the treasures of a king's tomb, but the possessions of a community, the quiet evidence of people going about their lives in the shadow of their cosmic creation. The discovery of human remains within the dolmens that dot the landscape confirms a profound connection between the living and the dead. This was not solely an observatory. It was an integrated ritual landscape where the cycles of the sun and moon were intimately tied to the journey of the soul. The alignments guided the living in their processions, while the dolmens provided a permanent home for the ancestors, creating a continuous dialogue between the two realms that was essential to their worldview. Perhaps the most transformative discoveries have been the traces of what is no longer there. Meticulous excavation has revealed patterns of post holes, dark stains in the earth that mark where great wooden poles once stood. These findings completely reshape our mental image of the site. It was not a landscape of solitary stone. The towering menhirs were likely complemented by wooden structures, perhaps roofs covering sacred spaces, grand gateways marking ritual entrances, or temporary enclosures built for seasonal gatherings. This wood and stone architecture created a much more complex and dynamic environment, one that has largely vanished with time, leaving only the eternal granite behind. By carefully mapping these post holes and analyzing the soil, researchers can begin to build a detailed chronology. They can see which stone rows were built first, how the complex expanded over generations, and which wooden structures were contemporary with which granite avenues. This allows us to understand Karnak not as a single, frozen moment of construction, but as a living, evolving project that spanned centuries, with each generation adding its own layer to the sacred design. Today, the excavation trench is being augmented by technologies that see deep into the earth without ever breaking the surface. Ground-penetrating radar sends pulses into the soil, painting a three-dimensional picture of buried features, revealing hidden pits, ancient pathways, and the foundations of structures long since erased. Even more intimate are the revelations from isotopic analysis. By studying the chemical signatures locked within fragments of bone and pottery, scientists can determine what these people ate, where they sourced their materials, and even whether an individual spent their entire life in the Karnak region or had traveled from far away. This turns an anonymous shard of pottery into a passport from the past, hinting at trade routes and social connections that wove this community into a wider world. Each scan, each soil sample, each tiny artifact is another piece of the puzzle. They may not provide a single, dramatic answer, but they gradually illuminate the texture of daily life, the organization of society, and the powerful beliefs that compelled a Neolithic community to invest countless generations in a project of such staggering ambition. The stones ask the grand cosmic questions, but it is in the humble, excavated earth that we begin to find the human answers. Every restored stone at Karnak carries a hidden debate within its granite. The quiet work of preservation is far from simple, often forcing us to ask a profound question: where does the authentic monument end and our modern interpretation begin? Throughout the 19th and 20th centuries, many of the menhirs we see standing today were actually re-erected. Time, agriculture, and human activity had toppled countless stones, leaving them half-buried or scattered. Early archaeologists and enthusiasts, armed with historical sketches and a desire to see the site in its former glory, carefully lifted these giants back into their sockets. Their intentions were noble, to rescue a crumbling legacy from oblivion, yet each decision to intervene was a gamble. How could they be certain a stone's original orientation was a few degrees to the left or right? Did a gap in a row signify a deliberate design choice by the Neolithic builders, or was it merely a stone that had been removed for building a farm wall centuries later? Filling that gap based on a best guess is an act of both reconstruction and creative interpretation. It creates a pleasing, orderly vista for the modern visitor, but it risks overwriting the subtle, ancient irregularities that might have held their own meaning. The purist viewpoint holds that a leaning, overgrown stone is more truthful than a perfectly straightened one, because its current state is the genuine result of its long history. It is a document of its own decay, an honest relic. On the other side of the argument, proponents of careful restoration argue that a completely collapsed and buried alignment is a lost story. They believe that by re-erecting the stones using the best available evidence, we are not creating a fake, but reviving the site's legibility. A standing stone allows a visitor to understand the scale, to walk the processional avenues, and to witness the potential solstice alignment. Without some degree of restoration, Karnak could have become an incomprehensible field of scattered rocks, its grand design lost to all but the most expert eye. This tension between preserving a ruin and reconstructing a vision lies at the heart of modern heritage management. The challenge is to ensure that every intervention is transparent, grounded in rigorous archaeological data, and respects the silent testimony of the stone itself. The goal is not to build a perfect Neolithic theme park, but to safeguard a palimpsest where the marks of time, from its creation to its conservation, are all part of its enduring truth. The sun and moon were not the only celestial bodies captured in this stone net. Beyond the reliable cycles of our solar system lies the deeper, more stable rhythm of the fixed stars. Some researchers now propose that the Carnac builders may have been mapping this stellar realm as well, aligning specific stones or rows with the rising points of brilliant stars like Sirius, the brightest in our night sky, or Vega, a beacon of the northern heavens. These stellar targets present a far greater detective challenge than solar alignments. Our planet wobbles on its axis over a cycle of 26,000 years, a slow drift known as the precession of the equinoxes. This means the star that rose with the summer sun 6,000 years ago is not the star that rises with it today. To test for these alignments, scientists must use advanced software to rewind the celestial clock, modeling the precise appearance of the Neolithic sky to see if a lonely, towering menhir once framed a now-forgotten star. Imagine the cultural power of such a connection. A star like Sirius, associated in many ancient cultures with renewal and flooding, could have served as a herald for seasonal changes, its annual reappearance signaling a time to prepare or to celebrate. Planets like Venus or Mars, wandering gods in the ancient sky, might have been tracked for their mythological significance, their predictable yet complex paths adding another layer of sacred narrative to the landscape. If even a handful of these stellar alignments are confirmed, it would completely transform our understanding of Neolithic intellect. It would mean their cosmic vision was not merely calendrical, but truly encyclopedic, an attempt to create a permanent, terrestrial map of the entire vault of heaven. This pursuit pushes archaeoastronomy to its limits, forcing a difficult question. Are we seeing deliberate patterns, or are we simply finding patterns we desperately want to see? With thousands of stones, the probability of a random alignment with a bright star is not insignificant. The proof must be statistical and overwhelming, showing consistent orientation toward stars that held demonstrable cultural importance across other megalithic sites. This search for stellar fingerprints is not about diminishing the known solar and lunar functions, but about enriching them. It suggests the stones were a multi-layered text, with some chapters written for the sun, others for the moon, and perhaps a few deeply encoded passages reserved for the timeless fixed stars. What would it mean for a society to anchor its identity not just to the cycles of the year, but to the imperceptibly slow turn of the great celestial sphere? It speaks to a desire for permanence that transcends generations, a wish to tie their sacred ground to the most enduring lights they could perceive. The sheer magnitude of human effort at Karnak is almost beyond comprehension. We are not looking at the work of a single inspired leader, but at the sustained, coordinated labor of countless generations. To envision the construction is to witness a society in motion, a civilization that had mastered the art of large-scale organization long before the pyramids rose in Egypt. This was a hierarchical society, undoubtedly governed by a powerful elite, perhaps priest astronomers who held the sacred knowledge of the skies and the authority to command the workforce. They were the master planners, the engineers who translated cosmic patterns into terrestrial blueprints and mobilized an entire population to make that vision real. Think of the logistics alone, feeding hundreds of workers, housing them in temporary camps, and managing the quarries, transport routes, and construction sites simultaneously. This level of coordination suggests a political and economic structure far more complex than a simple collection of farming villages. It points to a proto-state, a society with specialized roles, a surplus of food to support non-farming laborers, and a clear chain of command capable of executing projects that spanned centuries. How were they able to maintain this focus across so many human lifetimes? The answer lies in a shared, unshakable belief system that made the work not a burden but a sacred duty. Experimental archaeology gives us a glimpse into the raw physical cost. Moving just one 20-ton men here required a well-organized team of at least 200 people. They would have used wooden sledges, rollers made from tree trunks, and ropes woven from plant fibers, inching the colossal stone across the landscape in a painstaking, days-long procession. The final act of raising the stone into its prepared socket was a moment of supreme tension and collective triumph, a feat of leverage and synchronized pulling that must have bonded the participants forever. Now multiply that single effort by 3,000. The entire complex represents millions of person-hours, a staggering investment of human energy that had to be balanced with the daily demands of farming, hunting, and raising families. This was not slave labor driven by a whip, but likely a communal obligation, a form of corvée labor where every family contributed its time to a project that benefited the entire community, both spiritually and practically. The very act of building Karnak season after season, generation after generation, would have been a powerful engine for social cohesion. It created a shared identity rooted in a monumental achievement, a story that every individual could tell their children, "I helped build that." It demonstrated the awesome power of the community to literally reshape the world, reinforcing the authority of the leaders who directed that power. The political and economic structures needed to mobilize such labor tell us that Neolithic Brittany was not a backwater, but a center of innovation and social sophistication. They managed resources, time, and human ambition on a scale that rivals the early city-states of the ancient world, all in service of a common cosmic vision that united the earth and the heavens in granite. For the Neolithic mind, stone was far more than simple building material. It was a living substance, a physical embodiment of the Earth's own power and memory. These granite giants at Karnak were not inert objects to be moved, but sacred beings to be awakened and positioned. In a world animated by spirits, every rock, spring, and tree held a life force. To quarry a men here was not to destroy a piece of the landscape, but to invite a powerful entity to participate in a grander design. The choice of granite was deeply intentional. This was the most enduring material they could find, a rock capable of outlasting countless human generations. By carving their cosmic knowledge into this eternal medium, they were making a pact with time itself. They ensured that the precise alignment of the solstice sun would be witnessed not just by their children, but by descendants they would never meet, creating a permanent record of celestial order that would stand long after their names were forgotten. This transforms the alignments from a mere observatory into a covenant written in stone, a promise to the future that the universe follows a reliable, beautiful pattern. Why express this through stone and not through wood or earth? Wood decays and earth shifts, but granite remains. It was the only substance worthy of carrying a message intended for eternity. The act of raising a menhir was likely a ritual of immense spiritual significance. Imagine the final moment when the stone was levered into its socket, connecting deeply with the earth. This was not just construction, it was an act of consecration, a way of planting a seed of sacred power into the very flesh of the world. The stone became a conduit, a fixed point where the terrestrial and celestial realms could communicate. This belief in the vitality of stone is echoed in prehistoric religions across Europe, where rocks were venerated as sources of fertility, stability, and divine presence. A standing stone was a mediator, a silent priest that forever connected the community to the ancestors buried in the nearby dolmens and the gods dancing in the sky above. To understand this is to see Karnak in a new light. It is not a collection of tools, but a congregation of stone beings, each one a vital participant in a perpetual ceremony that harmonizes the earth with the cosmos. The builders did not simply use the landscape, they collaborated with it, awakening a sacred geography that continues to whisper its secrets to anyone willing to listen. These silent granite pathways may have been the Neolithic world's first GPS. Beyond their sacred and celestial functions, the Carnac Stones could have served a profoundly practical role as a massive territorial map and a sophisticated navigation aid. Imagine a trader from a distant coastal community arriving in this unfamiliar region. The long, parallel rows of the Carnac alignments would have provided an unmissable landmark, a fixed reference point visible from kilometers away. These avenues were not just for looking at, they were for moving through. They could have functioned as designated processional routes for seasonal gatherings, guiding pilgrims from the coast inland toward the great burial mounds and ceremonial centers. But their use may have extended far beyond ritual. The consistent orientation of the rows, aligned with celestial events, would have provided reliable directional markers. A traveler could use the axis of the Carnac alignments, which points toward a solstice sunrise, to maintain a true east-west bearing even on overcast days, navigating through dense forests or across featureless moors. This system transformed an abstract cosmic order into a practical tool for wayfinding. How did this integrate with the wider world? The stone's placement along the Atlantic coast is no accident. This region was part of a vast maritime trading network, and a visible, monumental complex like Karnak would have been a crucial coastal waypoint. Sailors navigating the treacherous waters of the Bay of Biscay could have used the alignments as a terrestrial lighthouse, their distinctive linear pattern confirming their location and providing a safe bearing for landing. On land, the stones likely marked the paths to vital resources, freshwater springs, high-quality flint quarries, and fertile hunting grounds. The entire complex becomes a giant, three-dimensional map, where the stone rows are the lines and the dolmens and solitary menhirs are the points of interest. This utilitarian purpose does not diminish its spiritual significance, it enhances it. In a world where survival depended on knowing your place in the landscape, the ability to navigate was itself a sacred knowledge. The stones that mirrored the orderly heavens also brought order to the human world, guiding both body and soul through the mysteries of an immense and unknown continent. The world these builders knew was one of profound climatic opportunity. The Carnac Stones rose during a period known as the Holocene climatic optimum, a time of unusual warmth and stability that settled over the planet. For millennia, the volatile swings of the previous ice age had given way to a gentler, more predictable rhythm of seasons. This was the environmental cradle that made everything possible. Stable, warmer temperatures and reliable rainfall patterns allowed for the successful cultivation of crops and the domestication of animals. People could finally stop wandering and put down roots, investing their labor not just in survival, but in generational projects that defined their identity. This newfound stability created the social surplus, the spare time and resources needed to even contemplate moving mountains of granite. But this stable world was not a static one. Minor fluctuations in sea level, slight shifts in temperature, and changes in seasonal rainfall would have been deeply felt by a society so intimately tied to the land. A series of drier years might have pushed them to build more elaborate ceremonial centers to plead with the skies for rain. A gradual rise in sea levels could have slowly encroached on their coastal settlements, reinforcing the need for a permanent inland territorial marker that stood above the tides. The very location of Karnak speaks to a sophisticated environmental choice. Its position on the coast provided a clear, unobstructed horizon, a perfect natural canvas for tracking the sun and moon without the interference of hills or dense forests. This was essential for precise astronomical observation. At the same time, the coastline offered a rich bounty of marine resources, a reliable nutritional foundation that supplemented their farming and freed up labor for the monumental task of construction. How do we know what their world looked like? Scientists drilled deep into the mud of nearby bogs and lake beds, extracting long cores of sediment. Trapped within these layers of ancient silt are countless grains of fossilized pollen, a silent archive of the prehistoric landscape. By identifying the types of plants that released this pollen, researchers can paint a detailed picture of the environment. They can see the spread of cultivated fields, the composition of the ancient forests, and even detect signs of soil erosion caused by land clearance for agriculture. This paleo-environmental detective work reveals that the builders of Karnak were not passive inhabitants of a pristine wilderness. They were active landscape managers, clearing trees, farming the land, and fundamentally reshaping their surroundings to suit their needs. This deep interaction between climate, environment, and culture underscores a central truth about these people. They were not simply at the mercy of nature, they were astute observers and resilient adapters. Their cosmic worldview was not developed in a vacuum, but was forged through a constant, dynamic dialogue with the world around them. They read the messages in the changing seasons, in the shifting shorelines, and in the very plants that grew under their feet, and they encoded that hard-won understanding into a stone testament meant to last through any change the world could bring. The silent stones of Karnak never speak of gender, but the society that raised them certainly did. For too long, we have pictured only men hauling the massive rocks and charting the stars, a reflection of our own historical biases rather than the Neolithic reality. The truth is far more complex and inclusive. Archaeological evidence from across the megalithic world reveals that women were central to these societies, not just as laborers but as leaders and visionaries. Excavations of contemporary burials often show women interred with prestigious grave goods, polished stone axes, and intricate pottery that signify high status, suggesting they could be priestesses, clan matriarchs, or revered healers. In a world deeply attuned to natural cycles, the lunar calendar, so crucial to the alignments at Karnak, was intrinsically linked to female biology and deities of fertility and regeneration. The moon's 28-day cycle mirrors the human menstrual cycle, a connection that would have been obvious and sacred to a people observing the rhythms of their own bodies alongside those of the cosmos. Is it so difficult to envision a woman, her life synchronized with the moon, acting as the primary astronomer, reading the sky's subtle shifts and dictating the precise placement of the next menhir? The construction of the alignments required a vast and diverse labor force. While men may have handled the most intense physical quarrying, the supporting tasks were immense and communal. Preparing food for hundreds of workers, weaving the massive ropes from plant fibers, manufacturing the necessary tools, and managing the logistics of the camps, these were essential, skilled roles that would have fallen to women, and their collective effort was the bedrock upon which the stones were raised. This was not a society that could afford to sideline half its population. The very endurance of the project, spanning generations, relied on the knowledge and traditions passed from mother to daughter, a continuous thread of cultural memory that ensured the celestial blueprint was never lost. Viewing Karnak through a gendered lens does more than just add women to the picture. It fundamentally reshapes our understanding of its social structure. Was this a rigid patriarchy or a more fluid, complementary system where roles were defined by ability and lineage rather than by sex alone? The evidence points toward a society where power and contribution were likely shared, where the spiritual authority of a priestess could command the same respect as the physical strength of a stone hauler. The cosmic patterns they encoded were not a male domain, but a universal language interpreted and maintained by the entire community. By asking who built Karnak, we are forced to see the real, diverse humanity behind the monoliths, a collective of men, women, and children all united in a single, staggering ambition to write their place in the universe. That silent granite army has marched far beyond the Breton landscape, capturing the imagination of artists and storytellers for generations. In the 19th century, painters like Paul Gauguin were drawn to the stark, primal forms of the menhirs, seeing in them a powerful antidote to an increasingly industrialized world. Their canvases framed the stones not as ruins but as eternal monuments, imbuing them with a brooding, romantic mystery that helped cement their public image. This artistic fascination found its way into literature, most notably in Julian Grach's haunting novel, The Opposing Shore, where the stones stand as a metaphor for the silent, unknowable past facing the turbulent present. In modern media, Karnak's distinctive rows have become a visual shorthand for ancient, esoteric knowledge. Documentaries leverage their grandeur to pose profound questions about human origins, while video games and fantasy novels insert them as backdrops for quests involving lost civilizations and cosmic secrets. They are rarely just a setting, they are a character in their own right, representing the ultimate unsolvable enigma. Why does this particular site hold such power over the creative spirit? It offers a blank slate of deep time. The absence of a definitive, written history invites interpretation, allowing each new generation of artists to project their own anxieties and wonders onto the patient stones. A filmmaker might use the alignments to explore themes of humanity's place in a vast universe, while a novelist sees a physical manifestation of collective memory. These artistic representations are not mere decoration. They actively shape how we, the public, perceive Karnak. Most people will never walk its avenues, but they will encounter it through a documentary's soaring drone shot or a novel's evocative description. This cultural legacy does more than keep tourist brochures full. It fosters a vital, living sense of wonder. It ensures that the stones are not just the property of archaeologists, but a shared part of our global heritage, a story that continues to be retold. Each painting, each story, each digital rendering is a new thread connecting us to that distant Neolithic dawn, proving that the true legacy of Karnak is its endless capacity to inspire. Every visitor who walks between the ancient stones leaves an invisible mark. The ethical challenge at Karnak is a profound one, pitting the global right to witness wonder against the absolute duty to protect it. Millions of footsteps each year, while funding vital conservation, slowly compact the earth and erode the very pathways that have survived for millennia. The hum of tourist buses and the glow of souvenir shops can overshadow the silent, spiritual atmosphere the site was built to cultivate. This is the tightrope of modern heritage management, where the revenue that saves the stones also threatens to suffocate their essence. How do we quantify the cost of a single selfie? The physical wear is measurable, but the dilution of sacred presence is a more subtle erosion. Efforts to mitigate this impact are constantly evolving. Carefully designed boardwalks steer foot traffic away from the most fragile areas, while informative visitor centers aim to transform casual tourists into respectful guardians before they even set foot among the menhirs. Guided tours, when led by knowledgeable interpreters, can channel the flow of people while imparting the significance of the landscape, fostering a sense of shared responsibility. Yet, even these well-intentioned measures spark debate. Does restricting access to the most powerful alignments during solstice events protect the stones or deny people a transformative experience? Does a state-of-the-art visitor center with its cafes and gift shops constitute a necessary educational hub or a step toward a Disneyfied version of the past? The core dilemma remains unresolved. How do we keep Karnak from becoming a mere backdrop for tourism rather than a living touchstone to the cosmos? The pursuit of sustainable tourism demands more than just physical preservation. It requires us to safeguard the intangible quality of awe. This means making conscious choices that prioritize the long-term health of the site over short-term profit, ensuring that the silent conversation between stone and star is not drowned out by the noise of commerce. The true test of our stewardship will be whether future generations can still feel the cosmic connection that inspired the builders, or if they will inherit a beautifully maintained but spiritually empty museum. Even as we uncover its past, the stones of Karnak are pointing us toward their future. The next frontier of research is not about re-examining old evidence, but about deploying entirely new ways of seeing. Imagine fleets of drones equipped with LiDAR and multispectral scanners flying low over the heathland. These are not just cameras, they are time machines. They can map the entire complex down to the millimeter, revealing subtle depressions and soil variations invisible to the human eye, potentially uncovering post holes for long-vanished wooden structures or even entirely new, buried stone rows. This high-resolution mapping will create a perfect digital twin of the site, a virtual Karnak that researchers across the globe can explore and analyze without ever setting foot in Brittany. In the laboratory, another revolution is underway. Advanced DNA analysis of the scant human remains from the dolmens could finally answer profound questions about the builders themselves. Were they a closely related local population, or did their genes show a mix of lineages from across Atlantic Europe, proving they were part of a vast, interconnected megalithic network? Isotopic analysis of teeth and bones can act as a dietary passport, telling us if an individual lived their whole life near the stones or had traveled from distant regions, perhaps to learn, to trade, or to participate in a solstice ceremony. This transforms anonymous skeletons into individuals with life stories, allowing us to understand the human tapestry that wove this monumental landscape. Software used to simulate the Neolithic sky is also leaping forward. Future models will not just show the positions of the sun and moon, but will incorporate atmospheric conditions, the exact topography of the ancient horizon, and even the flickering of individual stars, letting us experience the celestial drama exactly as the builders witnessed it. This precision will help settle fierce debates, allowing us to test with statistical certainty whether a specific alignment was deliberate or a product of chance. Yet, for all this technological power, the most enduring mysteries remain stubbornly human. We have assumed the site was silent, but what if it was designed for sound? Could the specific spacing of the granite rows have created unique acoustic properties, amplifying a chant or the beat of a drum to create an immersive, otherworldly experience during rituals? Did the complex evolve over centuries, with new rows added not just for social expansion, but in response to an observed shift in a celestial cycle or a change in the political climate? And perhaps the most fundamental question of all, how did the knowledge to execute this project even begin? Did it emerge independently in this fertile corner of France, or was it a seed of astronomical and engineering wisdom that was carried by sea from another megalithic center, then adapted and perfected here on a scale never before attempted? The stones hold these secrets close. The ongoing quest ensures that Karnak will never be a closed book, but a living laboratory that continuously challenges our assumptions. What groundbreaking discovery is waiting, hidden just beneath the next scan or encoded in a fragment of bone? The future of this ancient place promises to continually reshape our understanding of prehistoric intellect, reminding us that the most profound conversations between past and future are only just beginning. The stones of Karnak pose a silent, profound question about our own place in the cosmic order. This sprawling monument is far more than an ancient observatory. It is a physical manifestation of a philosophical worldview, one where humanity was not separate from nature but an integral part of its grand, rhythmic design. For the Neolithic builders, the predictable dance of the sun and moon was not a distant scientific phenomenon. It was the very heartbeat of existence. By aligning thousands of granite blocks with these celestial cycles, they were actively participating in the universe, harmonizing their society's rituals, harvests, and very identity with the turning of the great celestial wheel. This represents a fundamental human impulse, the deep-seated need to find meaning and structure in the vast, often intimidating expanse of the cosmos. They looked up at the star-filled night and saw not a void but a living, intelligible map, and they built a terrestrial mirror to read it. In our modern world, with our artificial lights and digital screens, we have largely severed this intimate connection. We understand the mechanics of the solar system with incredible precision, yet we rarely feel its rhythms in our daily lives. Karnak stands as a stark counterpoint to this disconnection, challenging the very premise of our technological progress. Have we, in our quest to master nature, lost the essential wisdom of living in balance with it? The builders of Karnak possessed a holistic vision where science, spirituality, and community were woven into a single, coherent tapestry. Their greatest achievement was not merely moving mountains of stone, but encoding a philosophy of cosmic belonging into the landscape itself. They teach us that the drive to understand the universe is coupled with a profound responsibility to align our lives with its patterns. What would it mean for us to rediscover that sense of sacred alignment, to look up at the stars not just with telescopes, but with the humble curiosity of those ancient stargazers. Their legacy is an invitation to cultivate wonder, to remember that we are not merely observers of the cosmos, but active participants within its beautiful, mysterious, and eternal order. Our journey through the silent ranks of Karnak leaves us humbled before the vision of its builders. They achieved something far greater than a simple monument. They wove a cosmic philosophy into the very fabric of the landscape, harmonizing their society with the eternal rhythms of the sun, moon, and stars. From the precise astronomical sightlines to the communal rituals that pulse through its avenues, Karnak stands as a powerful testament to humanity's ancient and unyielding quest to find meaning in the universe and to mark our place within its grand design. The mysteries we have explored, from the origins of its architects to the modern seekers who find solace in its rose, may never surrender all their answers. And perhaps that is the point. The enduring allure of Karnak lies not in the solutions it provides, but in the profound questions it continues to ask of every generation that walks its paths. Let these ancient stones be a reminder to look beyond the immediate, to seek the subtle connections between our own lives and the vast celestial dance above. If this exploration has sparked a sense of wonder in you, we would love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Subscribe for more journeys into the world's greatest historical mysteries, and maybe one day you will feel compelled to stand among the menhirs yourself, to witness the solstice sunrise and feel the echo of an ambition carved in stone. For the stones still stand, silent sentinels guarding secrets that whisper to us across